Hello everyone. In today's video, we'll be talking about one of the key consequences of inheritance in the context of object-oriented programming. More specifically, we'll be talking about polymorphism. Polymorphism means multiple forms. In the context of object-oriented programming, polymorphism means a same function performing different tasks in different classes, while the different classes are related to each other by inheritance. We can implement polymorphism in two ways. One way to implement polymorphism is by compile time polymorphism. In this case, we will have different implementation of the same function in different classes, or different operators are implemented in different classes. So the operator will be the same, but in different classes the operator will perform different operation. On the other hand, the same function in different classes may perform different tasks. The another way to implement polymorphism is known as runtime polymorphism. In this case, we implement a virtual function in the base class, and all the derived classes modify that virtual function as per their requirement. Next, we will see an example of compile time polymorphism through functions. In this case, we have the class that we have been working on in our last couple of videos, which is cplx num class. This class has two member variables, real and imaginary, and it has some other functionalities. However, for this example, we are interested only this method, suppose show info. And the show info is implemented as follows for the base class, or this cplx num class. And here we have the implementation of the show info. This function does nothing but prints the real and imaginary values of this class variables, member variables of this class. On the other hand, in the right hand side, we see that there is another class called cplx num ph, which derives the properties from the base class cplx num. It has same member variables, real, imaginary, although they are not supposed to be here. They're supposed to be inherited from the base class. However, just for the clarity, I have presented here again. But this derived class has another member variable which is not present in the base class, which is this variable, which is ph. Also notice that this derived class also has the same function show info as the base class. However, show info is implemented differently in the cplx num ph class. As you can see here, that show info class prints three variables, real, imaginary, and ph, whereas in the base class, show info was implemented as just to print real and imaginary and not the ph or the phase angle. So you can see that in the derived class, the function show info, which was also a member method of the base class, has been implemented differently in the derived class. So this is one of the utility of polymorphism. Next, we'll implement polymorphism in code. Okay, so we'll start our example for understanding polymorphism. In order to do that, we will get back to our previous coding example that we have seen, where we had created an object named cph num1 of type cph num ph, complex num ph. And in this example here, what we'll do is We'll learn polymorphism by modifying one function and one operator of the base class, and for that we'll pick this function of the base class, which is showInfo, which is responsible for printing the real and imaginary part of a complex num object, and there is little bit of formatting going on inside this function while printing. So we'll first modify that function in the derived class, so that when we call showInfo for the CPLX num ph class, it will not only print the real and imaginary part, it will also print the phase angle, because as you already remember that CPLX num ph also contains the phase angle of that particular complex number. So we'll now go ahead and start modifying that function, which is showInfo. So again, showInfo, even in the derived class, it will not take any input argument and the return type will be void. The only difference will now be that the scope resolution operator in the implementation, the class before the scope resolution operator will change. So we'll do that right now. So instead of CPLX num, it will be CPLX num ph, and it will also have the information of the phase angle. So probably we will print the phase angle like this. Okay, and that's a quick modification. And now if we go back to our main function, and the name of the file that contains the main function is now class underscore polymorphism.cpp. Here what we would do is we will take cph num1, this object, and call the method showInfo, and we'll see which function is called. So when we call showInfo, it should call the showInfo method of the CPLX num ph class, not the showInfo method for the base class. And that's one of the application of polymorphism. So the function name is still the same. Both the showInfo function in both the classes takes no input argument. However, when you call the showInfo function based on in which context that function is called, the output will be different. Let's see. We'll first compile and see what the output is. And as we see that when we called showInfo for the object of named cph num1, we get the showInfo printed here with the phase angle. There is a little bit of error. I would not say it's error, it's the formatting issue. We'll modify that just to make it more proper. Yeah, so we have our phase angle printed here. So this is the first function that I would recommend you to try, just to understand how we can implement polymorphism. The next function that we are going to change in the derived class is the operator plus. So as you know that in this function, in our base class, when we have had implemented the operator overloading for the plus operator, this plus operator function took a complex num type object as input. However, if we had this plus operator to work on a cplx num ph type variable, this input argument should be different. So we will now do that. So now we are seeing an example of how we can overload operator for in the derived class using polymorphism. So more or less everything will be same except that this input type will change to cplx num ph. And now we will get back to our CPP file where all the functions are implemented. We'll copy that and paste here, and remember the return type will be cplx num ph. Same will be here, cplx num ph. Now this will be cplx num ph2, the class, and the input type will also change. So okay, so we have everything here written. At the end we will be creating an object of type cplx num ph. So far so good. So we will get back to our main function, and now we'll create another cplx num ph type object, and here we will create another object of type, suppose cplx cph num2, which takes input argument as real part as 6, imaginary part as 4, and now we will have the addition operation again, but not with the object of type cplx num, instead with between two objects of type cplx num ph. So the result of the addition will be stored in another variable, which is suppose cph num3, and that will be the result of the sum of cph num1 plus cph num2. Okay, and next we will just call the show information function, because it should be already there. So it's cph num3 dot show info, that's the name of the function, and then we'll compile and run the executable. And as we can see here is that this is the output of the show info method, which was called on cph num3 variable, and cph num3 variable was obtained by the addition of cph num1 and cph num2. Hope this is clear. So we have seen here two examples for polymorphism. So it's nothing but modifying the name, modifying the function which was already existed in the base class inside the derived class. We have modified the function here called show info, and we also have modified the operator plus for the cplx num ph class. And cplx num ph class was a derived class and which derived many of its functionalities from the base class called cplx num. I hope this is clear. Should you have any question, please comment down in the YouTube video comment section. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe the channel to support. Thank you.